Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 231, recorded live from my very chilly basement on January 12th, 2015. I'm your host and Golden Globe winner for Best Supporting Actress in a Musical, Todd Klindt. Before we go any further, before I thank all the little people for my prize and all that kind of stuff, and run over and the orchestra plays and I act, before all that happens, first, I have to thank the folks at Rackspace. They make this show happen for me every week. They pay my bills. They let me play with SharePoint, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't do it without them. So if you want to get some SharePoint, get it out there, get it out of your data center and get it off to someplace so you can get back to doing other fun stuff. Go to sharepoint.rackspace.com. Video tutorials, all kinds of stuff out there. Laura Rogers, she's in the chat room. We got some of her stuff out there. I've got some things out there. All kinds of great stuff out at sharepoint.rackspace.com. Tell them Todd sent you. Next step, production notes. Don't have a lot. I think I kind of got things out sort of late, but I didn't get all out. Did get it out, so slow and steady, but I did get it all out. This week I will endeavor to get it out earlier. Lori's all very excited. She's proud of me. They were all out on Thursday. I apologize for that. They really should all be out on Tuesday because there's really not. I don't know if you guys have noticed. This may come as a big shock to you that listen to this podcast or watch the video or anything. I don't put a lot of production into this, so it shouldn't take that long. But I like to build the anticipation, get everybody excited about it before I actually unleash it on the world. So I will try to meet or beat Thursday for this. Laura in the chat room is also saying not only should we go to sharepoint.rackspace.com, but Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m. Central, do the SharePoint Power Hour thing. You can find out all about that at youtube.com/SharePoint RAX. Man, I got a speaker on somewhere to be in all kinds of chatty. So they do like a live thing like this, but they have more people and they're smarter than me and better looking than me, and they take questions from the audience, and it's a all around much better deal than this. But that's youtube.com/SharePointNet. SharePoint RAX. My goodness, I'll put that in the show notes. Lori, make a note of that in the show notes so I can put that in. But as for my production, going smoothly, got it down. We'll try to get it out before Thursday. On to topics. So I got a bunch of wild, disparate things to talk about tonight, but we'll start, and I forgot my timer tonight. I'm terrible at this. The first thing I wanted to talk about was an email that I got this afternoon, an email from I can't think of the name of the place now, from a charity drive, that's what it is, saying that somebody had donated some money and they had dropped my name. And that somebody is a very good friend of the podcast here, Joanne Klein, hailing from Canada. And she donated some money to Autism Speaks, and she did that all as part of the great 2015 Todd Klindt's birthday charity fund drive shindig thing, dealio. And so I wanted to give Joanne a shout out for that. I've known Joanne for years. She's, we've seen her at SP TechCons and things like that. She's been in the chat room. She all kinds of stuff. And now she has, and I think she did last year also, maybe the year before, donated some money for the birthday drive. So that is awesome. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate doing that, putting that out there. It's got her address in here. I might send her a little thank you card. Even though she lives in Canada, I think they have mail there. It's delivered by Moose, but it's there. So she lives up there. So thanks for that. This is something that Lori Gowan has been spearheading this year, the birthday fundraiser drive thing, and it's something that the audience of this podcast does every year, and it makes me very proud and a little weepy sometimes when I think about it. And Lori is heading all that up, and you can become a part of that if you go out to pointgowan.com/TK Charity, and you can find out about that. She's got like a little mailing list, and she will tell you how to get involved with that. And really, so the gist of it is, I don't have any particular charity. I don't care what you give to. I don't, and I don't even honestly care if you mention my name. I'm not looking for any glory from this. But and this is something that I don't even do. But just the idea is on my birthday, I do a lot of charitable stuff, and they thought it would be a good thing to kind of give back a little. So they give to whatever charity they want to. They let Lori know. She tallies it all up. She says, look, all these people that listen to your stuff, they donated this amount of money. I get all teary-eyed and all that. It's a good time. So you can go to pointgowan.com/TKCharity, sign up for the mailing list there, and Lori will be in touch so that your any charitable givings that you give here in the next couple of weeks will get added to the tally. And I've actually got a row of tattoos down my arm with every year's. It's very things. Good thing. But thank you to Joanne for that. Yeah, so my birthday is a week from Wednesday. We'll say Wednesday, a week from Wednesday, so try to get them in, get a hold of her before that. Okay, speaking of fun things, and this is a completely non-technical thing, so if you're only here for the technical meat, the technical stuff, you're going to have to skip a couple of things, but this is something cool that I got to do that I want to share with all of you guys, because I've known you guys a lot of years, a lot of you guys are my friends, and this is something cool that I got to do that I wanted to share with you guys. A month or so ago, actually maybe even exactly a month ago today, the company that my wife works for, a company called Workiva, went public. They IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange. Their stock symbol is WK. So part of that, one of the things that companies can elect to do, they don't have to, but they can elect to do, is things with the New York Stock Exchange. Ring the opening bell, ring the closing bell, things like that. And Workiva elected to ring the closing bell, and that was Friday, January 9th, and 40-some of us got invited to go along as part of this and be a part of that. So 10 or so were actually up on the podium, so the thing you always see, the podium with the bell, 10 folks or so were up there, and then the other 30 of us were on the trading room floor while all this was going on. And it is just one of the coolest, funnest things that I've experienced lately. It was just so iconic to be a part of all of that and to see all those things and to be on the trading room floor. I'm a big fan of Trading Places, Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, and so after all these years to actually get to go there and see all that stuff, that might have been the NASDAQ, I don't remember, but it was pretty cool. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about that process because it was just a whole lot of fun. So we got there. The weather, I didn't think we were going to make it. There was some nasty weather that came through last week, and our flight from Des Moines to New York was delayed twice. Initially, we were going to have like a 3-hour buffer between when we landed and when we had to get on the bus to go down to Wall Street. And the way it ended up is the time between when we first set foot in the hotel till the time that we left the hotel to go down to Wall Street was about 12 minutes. We checked in, ran upstairs, changed just as fast as we could, and ran right back downstairs. Because when we got there, the bus was there, and everybody was waiting to get on. They were waiting for us. There was 5 of us on the flight. It was pretty hectic. So got all dressed up, went down to the New York Stock Exchange, which was down on Wall Street, and I mean, it's just like you've seen in the movies. I mean, it's all the pillars and all that kind of stuff. They had a big banner out front of the stock exchange with Workiva on it and talking about that. We had to go through security, which was kind of weird to get inside, but we went through security, got inside, got little name badges so we could go in and out as we wanted to. And we got there, I don't know, half hour or so before the actual bell ringing, just so we could all get there. They had a videographer there and a photographer there to take pictures out, next to all kinds of things. We got all that taken care of, and they took us up to a big boardroom, which might be the most ornate room. Well, probably not the most ornate room I've ever been in because I've toured some castles and stuff, but this huge ornate boardroom that would seat this. The boardroom table would probably seat 50 people. I mean, it was just gigantic. The room was huge, and we kind of milled around there, and they had some drinks and stuff, and the stock exchange guys said some stuff, and everybody clapped and all that. And then we went down to the trading room floor, and it was pretty much just like you've seen in the movies, except it's way, way smaller. It's much smaller. So we came down, and there's a small flight of stairs that gets you up onto the actual trading room floor, and there's all the the little pedestals set up. One thing that I didn't realize, because I don't watch it, is CNBC broadcasts live from the trading room floor. So they had their studio kind of in the middle of that, and they had their desk, and it's kind of like if you watch the NFL, they got the commentators and all that, and it's just kind of sitting there on the edge of the field. It was the same kind of thing, only it was sitting right beneath the podium. And we got on the trading room floor 10 minutes or so before the bell rang, and just kind of walked around. It's all these traders, you know, on the phone and doing their computer stuff. They got monitors everywhere, and they're just working. I mean, they're trying to do their jobs, trying to make money and all that, and all of us idiots are walking around, taking pictures, bumping into stuff. But we figured out that CNBC was broadcasting live, and we could see the monitor there. So I knew this was going to happen ahead of time, so I recorded the closing bell, which is the name of the show, for Friday. And I mean, just like idiots, we're all walking around trying to figure out which cameras were on, see what was going on. And sure enough, when we got home Sunday, as we walked through it, you could see us walking past them. It was just kind of a cool thing. So so we got there and just kind of milled around, and then they had a very rigid schedule for us. You know, this is going to happen. When this happens, everybody claps for 30 seconds, and then you ring the bell for 10 seconds, and all, you know, and do the gavel and all that. And so we got to do that. The CEO of the company, Matt, went up there, did the gavel thing. We closed the bell, and it was pretty cool. And just walking around the stock exchange and seeing all the traders and doing all seeing all the stuff that they do was just pretty amazing. Again, just one of those things you see in movies and all that, but actually got to do it. So we milled around a few minutes after the closing bell thing was done, and then they took us back up to the boardroom where we'd been, and they served us some drinks and appetizers and stuff like that, and we all chatted. And then an hour or so later, we went out to have dinner, which was all part of this as well. But the dinner was also on the trading room floor. So between the time that we left and the time we came back, you know, all the people there got done doing work. They cleared some of the chairs and stuff out, and then put dining room tables up, so it kind of dimmed the lights. And so there we are having dinner on these, you know, ornate tables and all this kind of stuff in the middle of the New York Stock Exchange trading room floor. It was a pretty good time. I'm just kind of looking through my pictures to make sure I don't miss anything here. So that was fun, seeing all that and just seeing all the information, and just, I don't know. I'm not sure how much of it I could talk about. I think most anything, but I want to be careful. But just seeing all the things, it was, man, that was crazy. That was a fun time. And that was pretty much it. We happened to be staying at a hotel right off of Times Square, so that was kind of our home of operations. So we went back there. My wife had never been to New York City before. I'd been a couple of times, but my wife had never been, so we, you know, tried to see some of the big landmark stuff. We had to be back in town Sunday afternoon, so we couldn't really stay too long, but had a good time. One of the things that I wanted to do, so her and some of her co-workers had never been to New York City, and we didn't have any time to do much, so we booked a helicopter tour. And Saturday morning, first thing, we took a helicopter tour that started at the tip of Manhattan, so the south end of the island there, and then flies up the Hudson River and then back down. And so we weren't able to visit everything that we wanted to visit, but from the helicopter you could see everything. And then when we got back down, I'll tell you some more stories about that. But that was kind of cool for first timers, because you can see the Statue of Liberty, you can see the Liberty Tower and the world where the World Trade Center stuff was. You can see the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, and Central Park, and all those great things. And it only took, you know, 20 minutes or so to do all that. And a bunch of them had never been in a helicopter before either, so that was kind of cool. I got to sit up front just because of the way the weight was and all that. I offered to help fly since I'd been in a helicopter before. The pilot graciously did not take me up on my offer, but that was pretty fun. So sat in there. It was a good time. And then a couple of folks had to go back, but then there was 4 of us that stuck around. So the next thing we did was we went to Chinatown. And we just kind of saw that, because again, a bunch of those folks hadn't been there before. So we did the thing. We talked to the folks there. They tried to sell some nice watches, some very inexpensive sunglasses. So we really got a great experience from Manhattan from that. And it was just a really good time. We took the subway and didn't get killed or robbed or any of that stuff. But it was a great time. The stock exchange was so fun. The phrase once in a lifetime gets thrown around a lot, and I probably do it too, but I think this was probably a once in a lifetime opportunity to be beyond the trading room floor and be part of all that and see all that. It was a good time. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that. Highly recommended if you ever have a chance to take your public company, or take your company public and go to the stock exchange. Highly recommended. And I'll probably put some pictures of that up. For those of you that are friends of mine on Facebook, I put some of those up. But that was a good time. So thanks to everybody involved that helped make that happen. I really enjoyed that. Okay, now for a little bit more technical content, technical news. CES was last week, and there were all kinds of great things that came out of CES. And I don't have time to talk about all the great things that happened at CES because, man, I got to get to a CES sometime. If anybody out there can get me to CES 2016, make it happen. I'd love to go. It'd be a great time. But so I talked last week about some of the small computers that were coming out. One of the big stories this week, and I was kind of surprised by it, was an announcement that Intel made. And Intel announced that they were going to make what they're calling HDMI sticks that run Windows. So this is a small thing. It's about the size of a USB hard drive, a little bigger, plugs into the HDMI port of a TV or a monitor, and it runs a full Windows stack. It also runs Linux. Nobody cares about that. But it runs a full Windows stack. So what I find interesting about this is twofold. Number one, these things have been out for a while. I have had this Android stick for probably 2 years now, exactly the same thing. It hooks up to the HDMI connector on my TV. It's powered by 5-volt USB, and it runs Android. So I had that for a long time. That I used that on a TV. So I was a little surprised that everybody thought that was such a crazy thing because it's all out there. But also, I had seen the Windows ones before, months ago. And so this wasn't anything new, but I guess Intel's just got a good marketing engine. But where I'd seen them before was on Alibaba. For those of you that are not familiar with Alibaba, Alibaba was, again, a New York Stock Exchange IPO, I think the biggest one in history. Alibaba is a big online store in China. And a lot of people, when it went IPO, they compared it to Amazon. It's like Amazon, but much bigger. It's kind of like the level, in the supply chain, it's the level below Amazon. It's the place that people get parts to build things that you would put on Amazon. When Alibaba went IPO last year, whenever that was, I forget, there was a lot of talk about what it did and all that. So I went out and signed up for Alibaba because, again, it's a marketplace. You got to sign up, you buy things and all that. And again, you don't buy as many finished goods at Alibaba as you do parts and things to sell and stuff like that. So call it 6 months ago, probably, as I was going around looking on Alibaba for all the crap that I could buy because I do have a sickness. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. More gadgets that I could buy. I noticed these things were out there then. And there have been, I follow a lot of gadget sites like Gizmag, Engadget, SlashGear, those kind of places. And there have been little, third parties putting these things out for a few months now, and I saw them on Alibaba, but now Intel's putting them out, and now they're getting a lot of press. And it's exactly the same hardware. There's like a die that's been cast, and it's all the same stuff. So these little HDMI sticks that are going to look like this, a little bit bigger, not a whole lot, but about this form factor. They have the same hardware under the hood as all of these beloved tablets that I've been buying. So this one here is the Flex 8, but this Intel HDMI stick, when it comes out, is going to have the same processor as this. It's going to have the Intel Atom Z3735F processor. There's going to be both 1 and 2 gig RAM versions, and then I think the 1 gig version is going to have 16 gig of storage, and the 2 gig version is going to have 32 gig of storage. But it's the same system on a chip and all the stuff that's running in here, except it doesn't have a battery and it doesn't have a screen. Oddly costs about the same. I think Intel's saying they're going to sell them for $150. If you go to Alibaba, you can just buy them straight out, which I assume from like the manufacturer that Intel's getting them from, for like 110, 120, depends on where you look. The other, and did I put that? Yeah, I did. The other thing that you can look for if you go out on Alibaba or just the internet in general, you can do a search for MegoPad. So that is another one of the like the little local Chinese companies that's manufacturing these. Again, same deal. Intel's saying their deal is going to be out in March, and again around $150 if you want to get one of these other ones, one of these MegoPads or one of the other no-name ones on Alibaba. You can get them now for about $110, $120, something like that. Again, hardware is all exactly the same processor, same thing. Now, one thing that has kept me from buying one of these, which I'm surprised anything has, honestly, is the support story. And I think with Windows it's going to be a little better, but I bought this this Android stick here, like I said, a couple of years ago from some no-name company. It's called iMito, I-M-I-T-O. Getting updates and all that was pretty much non-existent. So I think from the time that I bought this until the time I quit using it a year or so ago, I was only able to get one update for it because it just wasn't well supported. The company that made it wasn't well supported. And I didn't know Android well enough to roll my own updates and package them correctly. So that's one thing I was a little nervous about buying one of these Migo pads or something like that. But with Windows, I'm a little more in my comfort zone. If I can get this device to boot off of USB or boot off the network or something like that, I can get Windows on it. I can get into it. I can get some things done. But obviously, the support for an Intel box is going to be a little better than one of these other ones. But you might give it a shot. They're a fun little gadget. So what would you use one of these for? So this thing will plug into either, like I said, a TV or a monitor. You could conceivably use it as a computer, a little workstation. It would plug right into your monitor. You'd hook a USB hub up to it, keyboard, mouse, network if you didn't want. It's got wireless built in. It's got Bluetooth built in, so you could use a Bluetooth keyboard and a Bluetooth mouse if you wanted. Absolutely fast enough to be just an internet workstation. Again, same guts as one of these tablets has. So all the things that this tablet can do, that thing will be able to do, with the same amount of gusto. So it'll be able to, browse web pages and check your email and go on Twitter and play Candy Crush or whatever the kids are doing now. That thing will be able to do. And we've talked about this before on the show. The hardware that's out there now, even the cheap stuff, is enough for most internet things, and that would do it. One of the white box Alibaba sites that I was going to was listing all the things you can do. They were talking about how it's secure. You can carry your computer with you wherever you go, and you don't have to use somebody else's computer. You don't have to worry about keyloggers and all kinds of great stuff. They might have oversold it a little bit, but there are some fun little things with that. And again, if this is going to have Windows 8.1 on it, everything's going to be in the cloud, so you're not going to have to worry about plugging in and not being able to do anything with it. All your applications are going to show up, all your Metro apps at least. On the start screen, all your data is going to be there because it's going to be in OneDrive. So fun little stuff, you can do that. You could also use it for like a home theater PC sort of thing. Have it up on your TV, run whatever on it. I think there's a Metro version of VLC now, Video LAN Client. You could run that. When I bought mine, that's what I used it for, was to consume media, videos, MP3s, podcasts, stuff like that. I had it behind my TV. I couldn't see it when I used it. And I bought this remote off of Amazon, again, like 2 years ago. This is I could tri-purpose remote. It's got all of my TV functions on it. So it's got volume up, volume down, power input, all that kind of stuff. It learned from my regular TV remote, put them together, did the dance, so it could control my TV. It had air mouse functionality. So up here we've got, you swing it around in your hand, and it moves the mouse with your hand, and you've got mouse buttons for that. And then it also has a keyboard on it. So I could, with that, hooked up to this little box, I could do whatever. I have tried this with a tablet, and it worked like a champ. So something like this. The brand that this is iPassport. They make a few of these little things. This was like $30 a couple of years ago. So that would be one option if you wanted to put your Windows box again behind your TV, because it's hooked right up to the HDMI port, swinging it around. That works like a champ. A little frustrating, but not too bad. But again, you got the whole Windows experience for $100 or so hooked up to your TV. Pretty cool little tool. I haven't ordered any of them from Alibaba. I may have just talked myself into it. So Lori Gowan in the chat room is talking about how this reminds her of hooking up Commodore 64 or VIC-20s to the TV back when we were kids 30 years ago. I absolutely did that. I had a Texas Instruments TI-99 4A that hooked up to the TV, and then a VIC-20, then a Commodore 64, and that was absolutely where all this whole thing started, all this computer business started, was hooking that up to the TV. Those were good old days. So this is going to be kind of like that. And I think, I've talked in the past about how I really like the fact that hardware is getting cheap. Windows is going to be cheap on these things. It's going to be free, I assume. So it's not going to add a lot to the cost. But I would love to get one of these. I'll probably have to do that. If you end up getting one of these, let me know. But with Windows, not with Android. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you use it for. I would love to hear, because I think this is great. I have this idea of Windows everywhere. When we were at the stock exchange, they had TVs all everywhere, up and down the hallways on both sides, every 6 feet or so, and all over, showing different companies that had gone IPO and different marketing things. I'm like, someday my house is going to look like that. And when it does, I envision something like this, running Windows on it behind every one of those TVs, pulling content across my network, making stuff happen. So fun little things there, all kinds of fun stuff at CES, but those are the big ones. Okay, a couple more minutes. I actually have SharePoint content to talk about. Hope you're all sitting down. If you're in your cars, I hope you didn't just drive off the road. I hate to have that on my conscience. The first thing that I noticed is the SharePoint 2013 query tool has been updated here in the last week, I think. Let me see when that actually happened. Go over to my browser. I've talked about this in the past. Yeah, so that came out today. Michael Svensson from Oslo, Norway posted. I don't know if he's the author of the project or not. It's a CodePlex project. You can go to sp2013searchtool.codeplex.com and download that. This is a great troubleshooting tool for troubleshooting search. This particular tool works with SharePoint 2013 on-prem and SharePoint Online, and it is an app that lets you form search queries, send them to SharePoint, and then get the raw XML, among other things, back from the search engine. And I can bore you to tears with stories of times that I have fixed search problems with a tool just like this. So this type of tool has been around since the SharePoint 2007 days. At least that's the first time I ever used one. And it is a great way to get in and see what's going on with SharePoint search. The first time I used one, I had this crazy problem where if you had a PDF document that was in a file share that SharePoint was crawling. So you have a file share somewhere, a bunch of PDF documents. You got the PDF iFilter installed. You did all that right. Nothing was wrong. You're crawling it. You did all that right. Nothing was wrong there. But when you did a query for one of those PDF documents, you could only get the PDF document in the results if you queried the content, but not if you queried the title, which is almost always exactly the opposite of how it worked with PDFs back then. Because if you didn't install the iFilter, you could search for the title but not get any of the content. So this was the exact opposite of that, which made it really confusing. So I did all the normal stuff. I checked everything. The iFilter was correct, obviously, because it was parsing the text of the file, but I couldn't get it by name. So I broke out a tool like this for SharePoint 2007. I did a query that would get me the results back, and then I just walked through the XML to see what was happening. And the file name that search had internally for the file was not the file name, it was some random looking thing. Turns out that there was a bug, and I can't remember if it was with SharePoint 2007, I think it was, where when it copied the file across, when the crawler copied the file over and saved it locally for the indexer to break apart, it created a random name for it so they could, crawl multiple files with the same name at the same time, but it used that random name when it put the file in the index instead of the file's actual name, and that's what was going on. It was a bug. I would have never been able to figure that out without a tool like this. The only other way I could have done it was back then there was a tool where you could inspect the actual index. That was not for the faint of heart at all. But if you want to do anything with search, this tool is free. It's at sp2013searchtool.codeplex.com. Download it. I don't even think it has an install. I think you just run it. But again, works with SharePoint 2013 on-prem, works with SharePoint Online. There's also a SharePoint 2010 version. Let's see if... No, not. So I thought maybe it would be an SP2010 search tool, but there's a SharePoint 2010 version of it out there also. So thanks to everybody involved with this. I don't know them personally, but that is a great little tool. It saved my bacon a couple of times, and I appreciate that. Last thing that I wanted to talk about, this is something that came up last week, and this is using PowerShell to troubleshoot email in SharePoint. And this is, I meant to write this blog post 100 years ago and never did it, but this is something that came up this last week. So we had an issue. We had a SharePoint farm that had incoming email configured on it. It had been configured for months, years, whatever, working like a champ. All of a sudden, users were complaining that email they were sending to SharePoint was not showing up in SharePoint. The incoming email job runs once a minute, so it shouldn't take long for it to show up, but it was just never showing up. And this farm had undergone some infrastructure changes. Some of the network appliances had been swapped out, upgraded, things like that. And one of those was a piece that relayed the mail. So we thought, oh, well, you know, if everything's working and then everything quits working, what changed? Oh, you replaced some of the network hardware, probably the place to look. So we looked to see if they were doing any kind of rewriting or anything on these mail messages. Nothing was happening there. And we talked to them, we're like, are you sure? Yeah, they're sure. So our techs hadn't really dug into it very much, but then I suggested to one of them, well, so then the guy, I think it was one of the mail guys that we were talking to about this, said, yeah, when we try to send mail to the SharePoint libraries, it makes its way through the system, we get an error back that says the mailbox is full. And we told him, like, it can't be us because we don't have any mailboxes, just SMTP running. There's no mailboxes to get full. So that's when I broke this out. I was talking to the tech that was working on it. I said, well, have you used PowerShell to troubleshoot this? And he hadn't, so I kind of walked him through. So you can use Send-MailMessage in PowerShell, v3 or later, to send an email message to anybody, anywhere, however. It is like the 21st century version of Telnet to port 25, hello, you know, whatever, Klindt.com, mail from, receipt to, all that kind of stuff. It is the PowerShell version of that, and it is a whole lot easier to use. So that allowed us to sit on our desktop or sit whatever, fire up PowerShell, run that thing, and the value of that is we would get the error message back. We would get the actual SMTP error, and sure enough, it said mailbox full, and that didn't seem right because there's no mailboxes. So then we took it the next step. We got on one of the SharePoint servers in the farm and did a send mail message, but instead of using, you know, the internet SMTP thing that ran through the network appliance and all that kind of stuff, we pointed it straight at the SMTP service on the incoming mailbox on SharePoint. Same command, different SMTP server, mailbox full. So since that traffic was not going through that appliance at all, sort of ruled out the network guys. I haven't told them yet. If you could keep that between us, that'd be spectacular. So then we're like, wow, we're actually, I mean, this SMTP service is actually doing that. So then we popped into the box, and sure enough, something had gotten plugged up. Actually, it was the configuration cache had crashed, and the incoming email wasn't getting collected, and SMTP actually has an upper limit on that. And so SMTP had been queuing all these incoming emails, had gotten to a certain number, and I forget what it was, and said, enough, I'm not doing it anymore. And it had stopped, and its way of telling that back was this mailbox full error. So we flushed the config cache on SharePoint, restarted the timer job services, incoming email ran, flushed it all out, and everything was fine. But using Send-MailMessage was an integral part of getting that whole process figured out. So it's great for troubleshooting incoming email, and I use it to test incoming email all the time. It's also great for troubleshooting outbound email as well, because we've all had that problem where we've had to troubleshoot SharePoint sending email, but nothing's happening, nobody's getting it. So it's the same process, but the other direction. You start on the SharePoint server, send mail message to the person from whatever your SharePoint address is, through the SMTP server that SharePoint's configured to use, and look at the response back, and then you start working your way forward. I've used that to troubleshoot bad SMTP settings and relaying settings and things like that. It's been a great tool. Built into PowerShell, every version's had it. I can't say enough good things. If you're on SharePoint 2010, you can also use PowerShell v2 to send mail messages. It's pretty ugly. I think it requires reflection and some other things, but it can be done, and it's better than the Telnet port 25 deal. So I've talked about this in the past. I've probably talked about it 2 or 3 times, but it just came up, and it sounded like a great one to refresh everybody on. So I do love that one. And that was my last one. For that, we will move smartly on to shameless self-promotion. Oh my goodness, in a month, SP TechCon is going to be over. It's less than a month from now. SP TechCon in Austin, Texas, February 8th through the 11th. Everybody's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Lori Gowan from the chat room is going to be there. Laura Rogers is going to be there. A whole bunch of the Rackspace team is going to be there. It's going to be awesome. This is the one that used to be in San Francisco, but they moved it to Austin this year, which is kind of good. I've heard a lot of positive feedback on that, so I think that's going to be a good time. So I am there. Shane and I are doing 4 sessions. We're doing an administrator skills session. We're doing upgrading to SharePoint 2013, parts 1 and part 2, the deuce. And then we're doing a troubleshooting techniques for SharePoint session as well. And I'm laughing because my cat, who normally gets behind me and interrupts me during my netcast, is climbing the bookcase one shelf at a time, and expect any second now to hear just a tremendous crash and thud as he knocks down a bunch of books or papers or something. And then I'll scream at him. There'll be profanities. I'll beep it out, and I'll use a little bang thing to cover my mouth so you can't read it. But yeah, he's getting ready to get himself in trouble here. But SP TechCon is that's going to be here in a month, so hopefully see you there. If you see me at SP TechCon, come up, shake my hand, introduce yourself. I would love to hear from you. I would love to talk to you. I'm a very friendly guy and very approachable. And then in 3 months and a little bit more is SharePoint Evolution, the SharePoint Evolution conference in London, England. And Steve Smith has graciously allowed me to be a part of that conference this year. I'm super excited. Cannot wait for that. And I'll be doing the upgrade sessions there as well. That is April 20th through the 22nd, and you can find that at SharePointEvolutionConference.com. Sign up for that. Tell Steve that I sent you. Tell Steve the only reason you even considered going is because I'm there. So hopefully he will ask me back years in the future. So that's what I got going on. Haven't heard anything about Ignite yet. I don't think they have announced any of the speakers, but I got feelers out. I'm sucking up to everybody that I can suck up to make sure that I can go to that. But that's the Microsoft Ignite conference. That is May, 4th through the 8th. I forget. But that one, yeah, May 4th through the 8th in Chicago. And I have not, again, I don't think they've announced anything about that, but I got my fingers crossed. I think we should start a grassroots campaign, maybe do some sit-ins or something until I find out whether I'm going to be there. And I'm happy to, sweep the floors, whatever. I just want to be a part of that whole thing. Looks like it's going to be awfully cool. But that'll be fun. So I think that is it for tonight. Digging back in, the last couple of weeks have been slow going as the year started, but I got some great projects on my plate for this next couple of weeks, so we'll have some good content for you guys next week. As always, if you've got comments, complaints, not so much on the complaints, but comments, compliments, whatever, you can hit me up at Todd Klindt on Twitter or todd.klindt@rackspace.com. I would love to hear from any of you. So until next week, I will see you. This is Todd signing out. Have a good night.